Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for High Velocity Radio.
Welcome to the High Velocity Radio Show, where we celebrate top performers producing better results in less time. Stone Payton here with you this afternoon. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast with CKC.Fund, Mr. David Doss. How are you, man?
Doing well. Thanks, Stone. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, I've really been looking forward to the conversation. I shared with you before we went on air, Lee Cantor and I just spent a full day at the FinTech South 2024 conference, and we did a ton of interviews. We caught up with some old friends, made some new ones.
Right on.
It's a very timely conversation. I got a ton of questions, David. I know we're not going to get to them all, but I think a great place to start would be if you could paint a picture for me and our listeners of mission, purpose. What are you and your team really out there trying to do for folks, man?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So, I mean, ultimately what we're looking to do is to mobilize systems that work better for a wider group of people. So the way that we see blockchain, digital assets, Web3, the way we see that kind of broader sector is an ability to create more value for more kinds of businesses, more kinds of groups, and more people, and that's ranging from investment and wealth building perspective to a more kind of a product and service functionality perspective on the business side.
If you could, would you try to give us lay people a simple definition or a way to think about A, blockchain, and B, maybe even digital assets?
A key set of factors around blockchain is that it is a decentralized ledger. So it's essentially a database with multiple different copies, and there's consensus that's needed or agreement that's needed in order to make sure what data is correct. So thinking through that on a more functional level, I like the analogy that a friend in literature used. They were saying, before we had kind of ultra standardized literature, let's say we had oral tradition, and there were multiple different people out there that had memorized different texts. And so an advantage of that is that when you do have that memorization happening, if you destroy one copy of the text, you still have access to the source text. It's not a perfect analogy, but I think that's one of the things where this is resistant to tampering, resistant to theft, resistant to censorship, basically what I would call more of an anti-fragile system, where when it's put under stress, it actually not only stays resilient, but actually can even grow under that stress.
I think it's a marvelous analogy for somebody like me. That's very helpful. And is digital assets, is this like crypto? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so that's I think an important point to make is we prefer to use the term digital assets because I think a lot of people will say crypto or cryptocurrency, but what's important to bear in mind is that there are multiple different types of digital assets. So when I say digital assets, I'm specifically referring to tokens of value that are usually on a blockchain. But those tokens can represent different things. So they can represent real world value, like tokenized real estate or tokenized, let's say gold, right? They can include though also what a lot of people conventionally think of as cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum, or they could also be completely separate around solving for a particular utility, like an access token to a digital space or a physical space. So the broader point there being that there's more to blockchain and there's more to assets on the blockchain than just the the Bitcoin or Ethereum that we read about in the news.
So what's the backstory, man? How did you find yourself in this line of work?
Well, I think it's been a journey. I'd say a couple of the key points along the way are firstly, I grew up in a pretty international environment and pretty mission-driven environment. So I was raised Orthodox Christian, and so there's a lot of these different communities around the world, in different countries, different cultures. So in that sense, also kind of a bit decentralized approach to community spirituality. And I mean, with that background, I was always interested in doing something that was basically had the ability to make some sort of impact across different communities around the world. And in university, I studied languages, social movements. I got involved in nonprofits, other, basically impact initiatives. And I became really interested in the ability for small groups in the private sector to impact change from the bottom up. So I was really, again, kind of interested in that decentralization before I knew what it was really. So after university, gravitating back to Silicon Valley, where I grew up, being involved in security, privacy, digital economy, commerce, these sorts of things. Once I found out about blockchain, digital currencies, it really was kind of the next evolution of that journey that, like I was saying at the beginning, this is one way where we can create more inclusive and more beneficial systems for a broader group of people around the world.
So, yeah, I want to dive into the work because I'm operating under the impression that your assertion is there is a place in my portfolio for digital assets, yeah?
That's correct. So the thing about, I guess, any new innovation is, you've got kind of maximalists who say, oh, this is going to completely replace. And then you've got the naysayers who are saying, oh, what are you talking about? This stuff is useless, right? And I mean, generally speaking, the truth tends to be somewhere in the middle. And so to that point, I like that you said a place in your portfolio. So, you do have the people that are saying, oh, this is going to, replace anything and everything under the sun. I'm not one of those people, but where I do think that the use case is rounding out the broader picture of a portfolio, that digital assets can provide a asymmetric upside opportunity in a portfolio. That's basically just a fancy way of saying that the reward far outweighs the risk when a small percentage of the portfolio is allocated into digital assets. And that's the case. That type of strategy is something that a lot of very wealthy and or very savvy individuals have tended to indicate preference for. So if you look at analysis from a modern portfolio theory framework or surveys of high net worth individuals, family offices, Forbes, even ARK Invest, various have indicated that a percentage ranging from 2 to 20% of a portfolio, depends on who you ask and what's what the person's kind of goals are for their portfolio. But that general kind of smaller position of a bigger portfolio is something where this can act as a hedge against uncertainties and vulnerabilities in other markets, that might make up the portfolio. So positions like stocks or bonds or real estate, and where it can also is still large enough that the upside is significant. So kind of finding that sweet spot between the risk and the reward is the point there.
So your work, your business, is it focused on working with individual investors like me, or is it working with wealth management professionals to help bring this as something that they can bring to their clients? What's your role in all this?
Yeah, so my team and we are a fund management team. So we manage vehicles that focus on optimizing returns in the crypto space. And generally, uh, the the folks involved in those vehicles can range from individuals, specifically accredited investors or kind of higher net worth individuals, can also include businesses, and can also include wealth management groups, investment advisors who are allocating on behalf of their clients.
So now that you've been at this a while, what are you finding the most rewarding, man? What's the most fun about it for you?
Yeah, so I think that it really feels like being at the center of everything. I guess the kind of the node connecting to all these other interesting worlds. And what I mean by that is a couple of things. So, firstly, just in general, I think that the financial services sector touches everything, from everyone's day-to-day lives, right? But also so does technology. So when you look at the intersection of finance and technology, it's just really very connected to just about everything that we do in our day-to-day lives. And so to me, that's a really exciting way to be kind of that expert generalist, where this one thing that I'm focused on touches all of these amazing areas, and where I get to see an impact that ripples out across other use cases, other sectors. So as an example of that, we are working on providing liquidity for other groups, for example, investment groups that are looking to build businesses or buildings in emerging markets, or in basically new opportunity sectors, like to develop new opportunity sectors like AI or intellectual property. And through what we're doing on the liquidity, providing the asset management and the due diligence, we're able to support those initiatives. And so I think that that's really exciting, where you don't have to do everything, but can partner with people who are doing all these other cool things.
Well, yeah. How does the whole sales and marketing thing work in your world? I would think it might be a little bit different than a lot of us and what we find ourselves doing to get the business.
Yeah, I mean, there's that's a good point. There are a couple of different aspects to that. So, firstly, just that emerging asset classes tend to have a certain level of education needed in them.
Mhm.
So I think people are largely just, maybe they're suspicious, or maybe they just need to know more, and that's fairly frequent. So so kind of that education component is huge. And then another part of it is as an emerging fund as well. So essentially like a startup, there's a need for people to get more comfortable with who we are as a team. So not just educating them on what we're doing, but on who's doing it and why we're doing it is another important part of things. And then also certainly just working within a regulated industry. So the asset management, but also dealing with regulations that are constantly changing because it is an emerging asset class. That means that, I think at the end of the day, developing relationships and giving people information and tools to make the right decisions for them is really what it comes down to, which is definitely a process. So this is not something where, it's throwing up a bunch of Facebook ads and kind of, having people click through and buy.
Well, no, your focus on education makes all the sense in the world to me, because I've got to believe, because I think this is true in most every industry, it certainly is in ours, in the digital media industry, that there are often some myths, some preconceptions, sometimes just flat out wrong ideas about how and why things work. I bet you probably run into some of the same kind of myths, misconceptions over and over from time to time, don't you?
Absolutely.
And the other thing I'm thinking, and again, it's true in our business too, but the level of trust that you and your team must have to cultivate with the people you're intending to serve. It's as transactional, I guess, as my initial talk about misconceptions. Initially, I'm thinking, well, this is a very transactional kind of business. It's not. Your work is extremely rooted in relationship, isn't it?
100%.
So as you were kind of finding your way into this new world, this whole new class of asset, did you have the benefit of one or more mentors along the way that kind of helped you navigate the terrain, or did you just have to kind of figure it out yourself and get a lot of scar tissue?
A bit of both, I think. There's, certainly it's been a team sport, but definitely also one that's had a few, collisions along the way, right? So, I think that, as far as that's one thing that I really find so inspiring about an emerging asset class like this is that the community is so passionate and also so tight knit in a lot of ways that a lot of people know a lot of other people and are pretty collaborative and just looking to learn from each other and build together. But yeah, I think learning is kind of a double learning curve, that there's basically alternative investment funds and alternative investment management is a bit of a kind of underrepresented niche, let's say, that's fast growing. So it's certainly not something where you can kind of just go and find info on YouTube that's necessarily 100% what's right for what you need. So knowing people who've done this sort of thing before is, I think, very important. But then also same thing with the asset class of in particular with crypto. I think there's plenty of information, but a lot of it is noise. So, knowing people who can kind of confirm or deny a lot of the kinds of stuff that you might read on the internet has been very important. So yeah, certainly it's a performance sport rather than a knowledge sport. So I think learning by doing rather than by reading has been important, but also learning from a community has been important as well.
So passions, pursuits, hobbies outside the scope of this work. Most of my listeners know that I like to hunt, fish, and travel. What do you do when you're not doing this and want to get away a little bit?
Yeah. So let's see. A couple of things. I mean, firstly, I think just really prioritizing spiritual, emotional, physical health has been really, really important in, I think the investment management space. Things are, there's a lot of stressors. And then when you add in a 24/7 market like crypto, it can really just get quite crazy. So just really focusing on, staying happy and healthy is, I think, really, really important for me. I think I benefit a lot from kind of this biohacking trend going on. So really kind of just working on, things ranging from measuring and optimizing, my various health metrics to, just taking the time to go for a run or to sit in the steam room and just kind of clear my head. I think these are really important things. And then, like you'd mentioned, sports and travel, I think are huge as well. For me, I've loved to travel, especially internationally, and it's something I get to do for work as well as personal travel. And then fencing, competitive fencing, is something that has been a long time avocation for me as well, which is I think also something that helps kind of reinforce the right concepts of building out strategies, but then also just kind of going with the flow when you need to go with the flow. I think sports can teach us a lot about life and business.
I am so glad I asked. David, I've been doing this for 21 years, and you are my first fencer.
All right. Claim
Is
to
that what you
fame.
call
Yeah.
one who fences, a fencer?
Yes, a fencer. You got it.
That is fantastic. All right, man, before we wrap, let's leave our listeners, if we could, with a couple of actionable pro tips, maybe something they should be reading, questions they should be prepared to ask, some things to look for, a do, a don't. But let's leave them. And look, gang, the number one pro tip, if you want to learn more about this and you seriously want to get your arms around this emerging asset class, I think those were the words you used.
Yep,
the number
for
one
sure.
pro tip is reach out and have a conversation with David or somebody on his team. But let's leave him with a couple ideas, David.
Yeah, for sure. So in general, like you said, I think just having the right people in your court is a really important part of life, right? I mean, we've got our guy or our lady, for specific things, ranging from uh, insights on the markets to sports to business, all of this stuff. So develop a good community that can help. Community of experts that can help support you is, I think, an important one. Another is, if you are thinking of allocating into an asset class such as crypto, digital assets, consider the tried and true frameworks that would apply to other asset classes. So one thing we see with the digital asset space is that a lot of people will either just park all their capital into Bitcoin, for example, or they'll be just putting all their money into these very low market cap meme coins. And there's some weird sense in which most people would never do similar things with their stock portfolio, but yet they do them with another asset class. So the analogy for what that would mean and with stocks would be, oh well, Microsoft is ultra high cap stock, so I'm just going to put all my money into Microsoft. Or oh, these penny stocks could 1,000x, so I'm only going to go into those. At the end of it, building out a resilient portfolio that's balanced, and that also needs to adjust depending on market conditions, is something that it can be a path to success, whether it be in real estate or stocks or crypto or what have you.
Yeah. All right, man. What's the best way for our listeners to tap into your work? Maybe get some of this initial education, whatever coordinates or appropriate website. But let's make sure they can connect if they'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of different ways. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Like we were saying, education has been really key for what we're doing. So on my personal LinkedIn, as well as our company LinkedIn, we put out a lot of educational content, videos, articles, market reports, and market commentary, those sorts of things. So would encourage you to check out the CKC.Fund LinkedIn. We have a newsletter on there you can subscribe to. There's also my personal LinkedIn. The URL is David Ambrose Das. So LinkedIn, LinkedIn.com/in/David Ambrose Das. And then, yeah, you can also feel free to reach out to me and my team via email if you like. We're at info@CKC.Fund.
Well, David, it has been an absolute delight having you on the broadcast. Thank you for your insight, your perspective. It's an exciting time for you, man. Congratulations on the momentum. That what you're doing, it really is important work, and we sure appreciate you, man.
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show, Stone, and especially after tackling 19 interviews yesterday, I'm honored to be on the show.
My pleasure, man. All right, until next time, this is Stone Payton for our guest today, David Doss with CKC.Fund, and everyone here at the Business RadioX family saying we'll see you in the fast lane.